Brandon, great to have you today, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Craig. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. My pleasure. Excited for this one. All right, to start, why don't you just introduce yourself to everybody? Tell us a little bit more about your practice, kind of what you specialize in.
Yeah, so Brandon Kennedy, I guess founder and president of Kennedy Financial Group. We're very much a comprehensive financial planning firm that works with retirees, pre-retirees, kind of getting them through that transition into retirement with just a clear plan. We use a lot of purpose and just comfort in what they're doing for the first time, and just helping people kind of walk side by side through that journey.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, so we'll get more into the people you serve a little bit, but tell me a little bit more about maybe what inspired you to do this, because I know that you were sharing before we started recording, you're the visionary.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to kind of start this firm?
Yeah, I interned just kind of randomly in college. I was always good at math, so it was finance or accounting. Accounting seemed boring, so leaned toward finance, but really had no idea what that meant or what that was going to be, and was really fortunate to land on an internship where, this is in the early 2000s, where financial planning wasn't very prevalent as it is today. It was more investments and products, and got a real feel for that transformation which was inspiring to me, of seeing somebody come with some money and some investments and have that become something that was living and breathing, that they really felt like, wow, I can see how this all works together. And that moment, where when the light bulb kind of goes off and people say, oh man, this is what I was looking for. It inspired me, as a young kid out of college, to try to jump into this business and help people. And that's what I did right out of college.
So leading people through that transformation is something that you found really inspiring and fulfilling.
Yeah, for sure. No, it was that still gets me fired up today. It does.
Yeah, I love that. So how many clients do you have now, Brandon?
Yeah, so the firm, and that's been quite an evolution, which maybe we get into, has changed, quite a bit. We serve about 400 households in total. We've got 4 advisors on the team. I've kind of gotten it down to my 100 or so households that I serve, and we've got an awesome team that has, from a capacity standpoint, we do really in-depth planning, and relationships are really important, and that's just not as much as I would love it to be, not possible with 300 or 400 different families.
Sure.
So we've built an awesome team to be able to serve those clients.
Yeah, I love that. All right, cool. Let's talk a little bit more about the people who come to you. So maybe you could describe the type of person who comes to you. Maybe a typical situation that they need you to lead them through. What's a typical situation that they might need you to lead them through and that they come to you with?
Sure. Yeah. In our general messaging, because we kind of form this through the clients that we've gravitated with, we're just outside Detroit. So a lot of automotive and what we would call just kind of humble, hardworking people who, live below their means. We're a big Dave Ramsey. We've been Dave Ramsey, smart investors for a long time, just paid off their debt. And then, after 30 years, kind of looked down and said, well, I've got $1 million or $2 million. I never expected this.
Yeah.
I really want to get this right. I want to make sure I'm in this cool, situation where I can kind of do whatever I want. I can impact my kids and grandkids, and sort of just, one of our favorite things, Dave Ramsey, change your family tree. Like, that resonates for us. And the clients that kind of connect are those that look down and say, boy, what an opportunity to do some pretty amazing things with this kind of accidental wealth that we built. And those are those fun plans to kind of put together.
Yeah, I love that. Change your family tree. That was one of the things that inspired me too, to choose to start a business. My old man was an entrepreneur, and all throughout my childhood, he would always try to build businesses, and he never quit to the day that he died trying to build a business, but he ultimately was unsuccessful. So I was like, oh my gosh, I got to figure this out for my old man. He died.
He laid the groundwork, and now you go.
He did, man. He's a big inspiration for me. So I love that. Okay, cool. All right. So let's talk a little bit more, so that when people are your ideal clients and you're a perfect fit for them, what are some of the questions that they typically ask you when they meet you for the first time or come to you initially?
Yeah, it's you get a range, but I think if you're narrowing it down to what seems to be consistent is, and sometimes it blows your mind because they are more than okay, but they just want to know, am I going to be okay? That whole thing of, am I going to run out of money? Or, that's a real fear that people have, even if they could make a ton of mistakes, right? I mean, their plan looks good. They've put themselves in such a great position, but there is that fear and reservation. And a lot of times we'll kind of joke with people. The people that really care and worry are the ones that typically don't have to worry nearly as much. And the people that don't care whatsoever are the ones that, boy, you really gotta take this more seriously. So I think it's a lot of just fear and unknown. And then when you really kind of uncover the layers of where is that coming from, it's there's a lot of complicated steps, right? There's things like, how is my money going to be taxed? Of how do I actually take money out of my 401k? I've been adding to that for 30 or 40 years. That doesn't seem right. How do we structure all that stuff that, for us is kind of a bread and butter of what we do, but really scary for them. So
Sure.
I think they come with those fears and reservations of, I don't want to mess this up. Am I going to be okay? And that's what we always kind of center on and build the foundation of. Let's start there and then kind of build from what do we want to do after that around your goals.
Yeah, I love that. When you've had your head down and you've been diligent and you've been working hard for so long and just been consistent, I think that's the biggest thing. You can wake up one morning, because when we interview retirees or pre-retirees, that's what they say. We just woke up. You woke up one day and you're like, oh crap,
Yeah.
the thing that I was waiting for all my life is about to be here.
Yeah.
And you spend so much time just putting your head down and doing your job, and then you have a nice little nest egg and you're looking at retirement and you're like, what do I do? So having somebody who's trustworthy to help you lead through that situation is an awesome thing. Okay, cool. All right, how about like demographics? Are there any like demographics that your ideal client falls into, that like age range, income, or net worth, any tangible numbers when it starts to make sense to work with you? I think you mentioned a couple numbers before.
Yeah, I think we kind of narrow it down to who we do our best work for. We have some service models, around, but the real core of what we do, which we sort of put into context, we call it our guided retirement roadmap, is typically for that 50-plus-year-old, has accumulated at least $500,000. Most of where we fall is kind of that 1 to 3, which is for most people, many people that we work with, is a lot of times just in their 401k, right? Or they have a pension lump sum and they have this, large pool of money that's in one or two places that they've sort of, I love what you're saying, head down. They sort of just built this up over time without any real intention. And looking at, what do I do with this now? And so it's not really an income thing. I would say we have some clients who never made more than $70,000 or $80,000 that have a couple $1,000,000 because they were just diligent.
Millionaire Next Door, right?
Yeah, for sure. They the day they started at GM, they did 10% in their 401k and did it for 40 years straight, and never thought about becoming a millionaire, but just did it, with consistency over time. And those are the one I would say that's very much who we connect with. It's not the ones that are, trying to be ultra sophisticated and all these complex stuff. Let's just, literally one of our core values is make the complex simple, and clients that resonate with us love that. They don't want a 100-page complicated plan. They want to know, first, are we on track? And then can we cross off some bucket lists? Can we help kids and grandkids along the way? And that's where we really get into the weeds of planning.
Yeah, I love that. Showing up for 40 years, being diligent, working hard. That's really admirable traits for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit more about your values and your approach, and maybe a little bit about your philosophy. So, where do you typically find your clients, and what are some of the ways that you get to know them as individuals?
Ooh, yeah, I would say at this stage in our practice, we are very much referral driven. That is where 60 to 7% of our clients come from every single year. We don't actively, ask or we just serve clients and do a good job and connect with them in a real way. And that's that has served us well in growing the business. Sometimes to a fault where we grow really fast because we get a lot of those, and I think that's just a testament to do the right thing over time, and let that kind of play out, and that's very much what we've lived by. What was the first part of it? You said where do clients come from? What
We
was the first
typically
part?
find you. So how they typically find you. So referrals.
Yeah.
And then you asked, what are some of the way? Then I asked, what are some of the ways that you get to know them as individuals?
Yeah, we do a pretty intense initial run through of what is financial success to you, and that's so different to so many different people. It's I would say the ones that we really can connect with, their answer is never I need $4 million, right? That's such a arbitrary number, and what we've seen is you hit those numbers and you don't feel any different or better, right? So it's really, what impact do you want to make? What is it, a legacy that you want to leave? Are there we have a ton of clients who, because they built this wealth, they sacrificed a lot of things along the way, right? There's probably some big trips that they didn't take.
Yeah.
One of the favorite things we love to do is, and it blows people's minds, and some people do it, some people don't, but fly first class, right? You can do that here and there. You don't have to be, like that's a thing that, oh no, that's only rich, wealthy people that can do that, or business travelers. And it's like, try it once. And if it's not for you, fine. But you've got some wealth that you can
Yeah.
do some things that maybe you never thought you could. And
Yeah.
that's a really fun part to connect with people on.
You could probably also be like, yeah, well, you're kind of a rich, wealthy traveler now. Congratulations. So
They don't
enjoy
want
it,
to.
right?
They don't
Yeah.
want to be called rich. They don't want to be called that. That is not how they identify. But yeah, you almost
Yeah.
have to kind of do a reality check.
Help build that
around.
identity up.
Yeah.
And that self image up in them too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not that you're the snooty first class flyer. It's that it's a little more comfortable, and you're treated nice, and it's okay to, that hard work that you did for the 40 years, enjoy some of that. That's okay to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. All right, let's talk a little bit more about, since you're the visionary, and you're growing your practice. What's your vision for it in the next 1 to 3 years? What kind of goals are you working on? How do you see your business impacting your clients, and where are you wanting to take it?
Yeah, I think we certainly have goals. We're still a growing firm. For us, it's number of households that we can serve, and over the next kind of 3 years, we have capacity within the firm because we invested in really good quality team members that are passionate about what we do. So, we can grow by another 100 households and still be able to accommodate really good in-depth service. And one of our things that we always, the litmus test of, if you ran into that client outside of the office, would you be able to recognize them, know who they are, connect with them, probably remember their kids, names, and really live that out? So, not trying to see how big we can get, but grow and, stay small enough where we can still provide that really personal level of service is important. And for us, that's kind of the immediate goal is be laser focused in helping the right type of client, doing the comprehensive work that we do. We've shifted quite a bit to tax planning as kind of
Nice.
a differentiator, and people are really looking for that. A lot of uncertainty around taxes and retirement, and kind of building out and developing that to be more in depth is something that's kind of on our radar over the next 1 to 3 years.
Well, I'm sure that's something that your clients would appreciate, helping them unlock more value by with tax planning. I know that's something that when you're retired, you think a lot about. So, as a business owner and entrepreneur, I think oftentimes we think about the things that we could be doing better. So it might be challenging, but I want you to try to maybe put your humble hat on for a second and maybe talk about yourself for a minute. Is there something that you do for your clients that might take a significant amount of time or energy on your part that they might never see or know about?
Ooh, that's a good question. Is that as far as the planning work that we're doing?
I think anything that you spend time, energy, or effort on that adds value to your clients that they might never see or know about.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, and I think my team is good enough where they challenge me quite a bit on uh, forcing me to become humble. But I think for us, where we really want to improve, and we've had some growing pains. I mean, that's just the natural kind of iteration of hitting a plateau and then growing and feeling some of that. For us, it's literally one of the three big pillars of what we're working on in 2026 is deeper client connections. And I don't know that. I think we try to do our best in the moment, but I wonder sometimes, do they really know how much as leaders of the business that we focus on challenging the status quo of how can we connect deeper? How can we get to know them on a level that is maybe even more so than they've even thought about their money, right? And really start to put names to the dollars that they have. And we do a lot of that behind the scenes, but we haven't really rolled out in messaging or marketing of what that is and what that looks like. And for us, that's something that we really want to be a firm that when advice, when clients share why they like working with us, it's not because of our performance. It's not because of, the planning that we do. And those things are important, but the more and more the industry moves towards, that's kind of the barrier to entry is, in
That's your
being
moat,
a wealth.
so to
Yeah.
speak.
Like if you're not doing that, what are you really doing? But I mean, there are some that who knows what they do, but for us, it's really, we obsess about how can we connect and understand, anticipate their needs. And that's where a lot of behind the scenes work that we don't necessarily share with clients, but we try to live out. And I think that's something that, I don't know that we share that enough or they're aware of it.
Well, you're probably already doing it, Um, Sometimes it's just about figuring out how to tell to tell that.
Yeah, no,
And
that's
that's a
fair.
process, It's
Yeah,
just greater levels of clarity, crystallizing your messaging into things that when other people read it or hear it, it resonates with them and properly reflects and conveys what you already have intuited in your own mind. And that's a
no, I think
process,
that's
man. It takes time.
I think that's very true. And I think I'm always hesitant where, you go back 20 years and there's sort of this imposter syndrome that happens as you're successful is I never thought of myself as a good marketer and I kind of despise salespeople. But over time, you just sort of
Yeah.
have to present to someone who doesn't know you why you care and why it matters, and
Yeah.
that's something that we always try to challenge and something that I definitely still have reservations around.
Yeah.
Even at this level where we're at.
It's funny. I'll confess to you, I struggle with the same thing, and I'm
Yeah,
supposed to be in marketing. But
yeah. I
I
don't
just want to be
totally
like you.
understand where
Just
it
let me
comes
do a
from.
good job, and then people will say stuff and talk about you, which it does happen like that, but sometimes it doesn't. So it's challenging to to put yourself out there like that.
Very much so. Yeah, even after 20 years of, I'm pretty confident what I do, but yeah, there is that little bit of reservation of, am I worthy
Yeah,
to share this with others? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um, well, I think that comes from a place of good intentions.
It does.
So
It does.
I think that's healthy to a certain respect. All right, so let's talk about this. So as your practice has grown from where it was,
Mhm.
we never do this alone. I think sometimes we would like to, um, but it's never works out like that. There's always people around us. So are there any programs, trainings, or organizations that have kind of helped shape your approach and maybe positively impacted how you serve your clients and have impacted them? Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, no, that's I've had some awesome mentors over time. I think if I go way back early on when I was struggling, at a wirehouse trying to build a business and all that, I had some really good mentors that sort of stepped in and would sit in on some meetings and talk about how you connect with people and all of that. And then as the practice is grown and I've gotten comfortable with that skill set of connecting with clients one on one, it's now become, all right, how do you build strategy for a growing business that I never really, I always thought, okay, I'm gonna all my skill set and all my time and energy is going to be around being a great advisor. And now as that
Hmm.
capacity hit a little bit of a wall and we had to pivot and build a team to be able to continue to serve, now It's how do you lead a business that's growing at a rate that we really couldn't have even predicted. And how do you become a business leader? How do you manage people and all of that? So limitless coaching is one that we've done. This is our third year with them. Stephanie Bogan is incredible, and
Yeah,
you just
she's
get to sit
awesome.
with other peers. I mean, that's been fantastic. Michael Kitsis is one I've listened to that podcast for 20 years, and to actually meet with him and be part of his coaching, one-on-one coaching has been kind of game changing. And us just looking at, again, that imposter syndrome kind of creeps in on boy, we've built a firm that is pretty darn successful. And just by the nature of referrals and growth, we're going to be bigger 3 years from now. And how are we thinking like the firm 3 years from now so that service doesn't drop and we can still continue to challenge the status quo of what we offer? And that's kind of where our mind goes. And Limitless has been essential in getting us the right mindset, thinking, not just in the next 90 days, but in the next 3 years and 10 years. And that's been incredibly helpful for sure.
Yeah, Stephanie's great. I admire how hard she works. She works
She's a
really
go-getter.
hard.
A lot of energy. That sometimes I feel like, man, if I could have half her energy, I could
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. It's interesting. It's a whole different skill set to learn. You're learning a whole new skill set. It's definitely a journey. All right, so let's talk about maybe more about your actual process. So for somebody who's listening and they're like, oh, I love what this guy's talking about. This might be for me. Let's say somebody becomes a client today. Maybe you could walk me through your actual process. So somebody becomes a client today.
Yep.
Maybe what happens in the first couple of weeks? What does it look like to work with you during those first couple of weeks and maybe during the course of a calendar year?
Yeah. Yeah. Coming on board, everybody's going to come from different perspectives. For us, we really lean into, and we've spent some time, it's all in our heads of what does financial planning mean? We really leaned into what we call our guided retirement roadmap. And that is basically, it's, again, you can get a good financial plan at a lot of different places, but for us, there's some clarity around the four main areas of mapping out their retirement income. What is that going to look like? How much do you need? This is, going back to Nick Murray, a date and dollar specific plan for retirement. Getting that, you'd be amazed at somebody who comes in and just doesn't have a real plan on how much do you need to live on? What do you want to do? And so really building that first, that for us is the foundation. It's the, when we use roadmap, terminology, it's that's the vehicle that we're going to go in. That's the direction that we're going to, and that's kind of defining what we want your plan to look like. So we spend a lot of time, and before we ever talk about let's change your investments or let's do this strategy, let's get a really good understanding of what financial success means to you and what are the goals that you would like to accomplish over these next 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and have that be the foundation. Then number 2 is aligning their investments. A lot of times that's going to be a completely separate meeting, to talk through what changes we need to make. What are you comfortable with? We use a bucket approach. Let's build in the right buckets for the planned use. Put a name to every dollar. Let's kind of go through that process. Number 3 is taxes and getting a really good understanding of what does it look like now, what's on the horizon. I don't want to get too much into details and all that, but RMDs are kind of scary for a lot of people that have built significant 401k and pension, amounts. IRMA, getting into how's this going to affect your Medicare, and really understanding taxes now and what can we do to have a plan for the next 30 plus years of retirement to really control our taxes. And then the last item is more safeguarding. This is looking at things like insurance and estate planning, having that. Nobody gets to walk away with any of this money. So let's make sure that your goals are, in place right now. And then another thing that we run into on that front is very much around helping kids and grandkids now. Let's not wait till you have $10 million when you're 95 and you pass it on to your 75-year-old, son or your, newly retiring granddaughter. Let's try to build in a plan that helps them now. That's way more fulfilling and way more impactful to, help a 30-year-old with a down payment on a house now versus helping them pay off their house when they're 50 or 60. So really kind of, and then that's what we revisit year after year, right? So it's that roadmap. What is most prevalent? Let's make sure we can make some course corrections as life happens, your goals change, the market and the economy and tax laws change, and just kind of that's our outline and framework for how we're going to walk side by side with them on what's most important to them about money and what steps can we take to be as efficient as possible to help you get there.
I love it. I love how you start with the goals and then you plan everything around that. Starting with the legacy planning before you're 95. That's also sounds like a good idea. So
it's one of those that we run. We use software that'll kind of run these crazy projections. You see these giant numbers, and it's like, is that really what the end goal is, to have as much as you possibly can when you die? There's got to be some good we can do along the way. Yeah. And we're big on charitable giving and doing donor advised funds and just setting up kind of this next generation legacy that. Again, they didn't mean to do, but they put themselves in such a cool position that there's some pretty awesome things that money can do, right? It's just a tool to do some really great things.
Yeah. That's right. On that note, wrapping up here, but maybe you could talk a little about what are some of the things that your clients should be excited about after retirement?
Yeah, it's funny. We have a lot of clients that despise that word, and if you look at the definition, it means to terminate something, right? When you retire something, a product, or
we should just start calling it out to. You might as well call it out to pasture, right?
I mean, and that's especially when you have some that have done well and retire in their mid 50s. They're like, I'm not retired. Just hold on. Let's not use that word. I'm not a retiree. We use work optional, which is kind of the same idea. Yeah. But when you look at what retirement is it's the last third of your life, right? It is not the end of something. These are when, families can, especially the ones that have done well and now have no mortgage, no debt, they lived way below their means. They've got a boatload of money. They're going to turn on Social Security. They can do some pretty awesome things. So it's really, we go through an exercise where we do a workshop called Visualize Retirement. It's all the non-financial things. And that's the thing that most people struggle with, of who am I going to spend time with? What am I going to do? What is my purpose? That I wake, for 40 years, I woke up every morning, went to work, saved into my 401k. Now that's completely different. I don't have to wake up and do that. I can take from that account. And how do we have that be fun and enjoyable? And let's plan out. We do a lot of kind of the next 3 years. What are you going to do? What are the trips you're going to take? You're going to, rent an Airbnb and invite your whole family. Like, those are the fun ones to do. We've had some clients, either buy or rent an RV and kind of go and see the whole, country that they haven't seen their whole life. I mean, those are the cool things to be able to kind of experience. And that's my favorite thing, is to build a plan, run through the numbers and say, hey, if we take this big trip, right, you might spend 30 or 40 grand like you've never done in your life on a trip. And then you see the impact of their long-term plan just kind of drop down a little bit. And they're like, that's it. That's we can do that. And that's all
totally worth it.
Let's do it. And let's set up the distribution now. Let's plan it now. Those are the fun things that, like I said, I still get fired up about planning for, even after doing this almost 25 years.
I love it, man. That's great. That's so exciting. All right. So we're about at time here, but for someone listening who wants to get in touch with you, who sees themselves going through what you describe as your ideal clients and is ready for that, what should they do next? How should they get in touch with you?
Yeah. You can go right to our website, KennedyFG, as in financialgroup.com. There's a little button called Start Here. And, like I said earlier, this is kind of what we've cast down for the entire firm. We are not high pressure salespeople. We despise that. So our process is very much set up where it's kind of a fit, type process, where initial meeting is what we call a sounding board session. You book that. It's 30 minutes. You can ask any and all questions that are on your mind. You can try to learn about us if you want to, or we're here to just help. Sometimes in that 30 minutes, we just find out, hey, you're kind of doing a lot of things right. And, maybe we're not the right fit. The whole goal of that discussion is to decide, should we have the next meeting? Again, no pressure, no cost, anything like that. The next meeting, we do a deeper dive. If that's, and for most people, that's when we really dive in and we start to demonstrate what we do as planners. So you end up getting a couple of hours of free financial planning. We get a feel for, would we be the right fit? Can we add, enough value to your situation that you think it makes some sense? You get a feel for how we work and how we interact, and you get to see us and get a feel for what we do. And, at the end of that, we do a really nice retirement assessment. We kind of go through opportunities, red flags that they might have that we see that we potentially could help them out with. We do an investment audit, kind of a tax report, and they walk away with a really nice overview of where they're at. And for some, they say, this is great. I don't want to do this on my own. Can we talk about how we would partner together? And for others, they say, all right, this sort of reinforces what I've done, and I'm going to kind of keep running with it. And both of those are fine, right? We don't want to try to convince anybody that we're smarter than them or we can do it better. But if they want a guide and they want somebody who has been through this before, and they see some value in what we do, then we, that's usually a clear next step and fit from there. And if not, it's no big deal. We don't hound them down. We don't, harass them until they make a decision. And it's a really low pressure environment to go through what can be a pretty daunting process, to talk to a financial planner, especially for the first time. So we make that very, very easy and approachable.
I love it. No pressure. Focus on value. KennedyFG.com.
That's right. The site. There's a little button, start here, and you can kind of book that initial meeting.
Perfect. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate you. Really enjoyed talking with you, learning more about your business and the types of people that you serve. So thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, Greg. Appreciate it.